Hello, everyone, and welcome back to In the Spotlight, where we have with us once again John Sitilides, a geopolitical strategist, former State Department diplomacy consultant, and national security senior fellow. John, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the show to discuss what's happening in the Eastern Mediterranean and, of course, Greece.
Of course, Yanna. Great to be with you and your audience again.
John, Greece is in its strongest political position more than ever, especially after the debt crisis. And my first question to you is, how has the Eastern Mediterranean shifted from the national concerns to a core pillar of U.S. energy and security strategy in the recent years? There's so much attention towards Greece at the moment. In your view, what is that shift of Washington focusing on Greece at the moment?
I think it's a combination of factors, Yanna. One is clearly Washington sees the Eastern Mediterranean as a far more strategic region, given the fact that it's at the vortex of all of these wars and crises, whether it's the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the first one in 2014, and the second massive armored invasion in 2022, the ongoing chaos we've seen largely because of Iranian proxies in the Middle East, in Iraq and Syria, the Syrian civil war going back to 2012, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then south of Greece, we have the civil war, a raging civil war in Libya ever since NATO, in my opinion, very foolishly overthrew the government of Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011 or 2012. So I think, first of all, the region itself has become much more fraught, much more perilous, and the U.S. is looking for reliable strategic allies to help us advance our interests in that part of the world. And Greece itself has largely harmonized many of its foreign policy and national security policies. They happen to align now with American interests in the region in a way they really haven't in decades. So we have a government now that is dedicated to building up energy grid and energy infrastructure in the East Med, opening up Greece's territory for more bases where the U.S. can rapidly deploy and help better protect Greece, the Aegean, the Eastern Med, and that part of Europe. And also, unfortunately, because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a port like Alexandroupolis has been critical to providing energy, military hardware, transportation, energy supplies, and foodstuffs for the people and military forces of Ukraine, starting in Alexandroupolis through Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova. And so in so many ways, both the strategic interests in the region have shifted, and so has Greece's foreign policy, far more harmonized with the United States. And we now have the strongest, as you correctly note, Yanna, the strongest U.S.-Greece relationship probably in at least 50 years.
John, our United States ambassador to Greece, Kimberly Guilfoyle, hit the ground running. She has been very clear on the position of the United States, making Greece a very good ally and Western partner. And she is predominantly focused on the energy sector and national security in the Eastern Mediterranean. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So first of all, it's important to note, and this goes back to the work that I was doing at the State Department for about 17 years as a diplomacy consultant under Presidents Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. And I had Greece and Cyprus, and for about 7 years, I also had Turkey. And one of the things that we need to remind our friends abroad is that the number one responsibility of any U.S. ambassador is to carry forward the foreign policy agenda of the President of the United States and that administration of Washington, D.C., not of the country where he or she is positioned. So Kimberly Guilfoyle, as a close personal friend of President Trump going back at least 2 decades, they have each other's mobile numbers on their phones, is somebody who is, first of all, very intelligent, a skilled communicator, legal background, sharp mind, and I think knows the president's foreign policy agenda for the Eastern Mediterranean exceptionally well. And she's able to communicate in a very different way than her predecessors. First of all, she's a political appointee following George Tunis, when for the last several decades, going back to the early 1990s, it was only foreign service area officers that were sent to a post like Greece. Now we have political appointees that have a personal relationship with the president, and I think that is very much to Greece's advantage, even though I doubt she'll go over Secretary of State Marco Rubio's head. She shouldn't, unless there's an emergency or a crisis that no one wants to see. She has taken a certain social flair. She's brought it to the job in a way that really we haven't seen in quite some time, if at all, in modern U.S.-Greece relations. But she seems to be very, very effective, especially in conveying the critical issues in energy, in defense, in transportation, in logistics, and also, very importantly, because the Trump agenda is very much promoting American foreign direct investment in other countries and promoting investments from those countries in the U.S. economy. So the commercial ties from the U.S. and Greece relationship, I believe, will be strengthened with the kind of leadership that Ambassador Guilfoyle is and will continue to display in the months and years to come.
John, the United States and Europe are seeing infrastructure through a security lens. And of course, the role of the majority stakeholder, China's Costco, in the Port of Piraeus is bringing up a long-standing debate about security in that region.
It's the unfortunate outcome of very difficult economic circumstances for Greece going back to the financial crisis in 07, 08, 09. And when the Greek government at that time was looking to improve and enhance the port operations and looking for an international partner, frankly, no one from the U.S. bid on it. No one from Europe bid on it. None of the major Gulf Arab countries put in a serious bid. The only entity that was willing to bid on that project at that very perilous time in European finance was Costco. And so the Greek government really didn't have many options. They welcomed Costco. Unfortunately, there was a poor decision by the previous Greek administration to allow Costco to exceed a majority share. I think it's now around a 2/3 share of the port of Piraeus. And the problem is this is at a time when not just Greece, but many countries in Europe and frankly, the United States was promoting more economic, commercial, and investment engagement with China when we were under the misimpression that China was on its way to becoming a quote unquote responsible stakeholder in the rules-based international order. And now what we have is a far more aggressive, belligerent, and malign Communist Party of China that has caused so many problems for the U.S., for Europe, for our Western partners and our East Asian partners. And we want as clean a port complex in Europe as possible without malign Chinese influence, for instance, data surveillance, intelligence gathering, and possibly even contaminating infrastructure with Chinese technology that can be used for very nefarious purposes. So I think there's a little bit of a tension there right now between Washington and Athens, because I think the Greek government is loath right now to revisit the contract with Costco, but Washington would like very much to engage in fuller operations at Piraeus. And if we can't, because we can't trust the Chinese communist presence there, we may have the United States looking at alternatives like the port of Elefsina that now will likely be upgraded and improved with significant U.S. government investment.
It seems, I mean, everything's being seen through a security lens, and of course, it's inseparable from national security planning. Going back into energy, the United States is also increasing their presence in offshore exploration, also up in the Eptanissa, as well as Crete.
Well, first of all, this is simply the basis of physical and geological reality. Greece potentially is sitting on top of very significant hydrocarbons, gas, and potentially beneath the gas, oil. And it's very important for any country today, and especially in the years and decades to come, as we become a more technologically based Western economy, advanced industrial economy, to have reliable energy. And I think not Greece so much, but many European countries fell under the fallacy of climate alarmism and sacrificed their industrial power and their defense capabilities to build wind and solar power, which is utterly unreliable, especially in inclement weather, and has led to the deindustrialization of great economies like Germany and the United Kingdom. Greece has potential hydrocarbons not only to power its own economy, besides what wind and solar can do, and Greece is blessed by geography because the wind does blow very frequently in the Aegean, Mediterranean, and Ionian seas. And of course, Greece is blessed with sunshine 98% of the year. But in other parts of Europe, it doesn't work. But if Greece can complement its renewable energy supply and power generation with hydrocarbons, especially for now natural gas, it can not only power its own economy reliably and welcome data centers and look to see where it's part of a larger technological industrial base in Europe, but also export much of that power and help to make for a more prosperous Greek economy. So having partners like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, come in, Shell, other countries with other major oil companies and energy companies coming in, conducting exploration, hopefully being able to extract commercialized gas and oil deposits in the future to really help power the Greek economy will be a tremendous boom, while Greek environmental regulations do their best to maintain Greece's pristine environment so that the people can enjoy the seas, tourists can enjoy the seas, and strike the right balance between economic prosperity and growth with ecological conservation. And that's what I think these companies are looking to partner with the Greek government to do. We wish them great success, and I would love nothing more than for Greece to become a hydrocarbon exporting power in Southern Europe.
We would all like that. I mean, the United States also has a long-standing presence at Suda Bay. Mm-hmm. How has that evolved in the recent years?
Well, the good news is that Suda Bay is now an aspect of the U.S.-Greece defense partnership that the Greek government is willing and very happy and capable of promoting. I can tell you, Yanna, that until about 2015, many of us who've been working in Washington over the decades were quietly advised to not really play up Suda Bay because there was always the fear of communist protesters in Crete obstructing the U.S. military, the Greek military from conducting exercises, and not just the U.S. and Greece, but it really is opened by the Greek government for a whole host of intra-NATO operations, rocket testing, R&R for ships and for planes and the like. So it's really a NATO asset that Greece controls, and now Greece is able to more credibly and reliably be able to promote Suda Bay as the single most important deep water port between Norfolk, Virginia and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. So once upon a time when there was, say, the Sixth Fleet shipping coming from the Atlantic coast of the United States into the Strait of Gibraltar, into the Mediterranean, if it needed repairs, it would have to go back across the Atlantic Ocean. And now it's able to dock at Suda Bay. So both in terms of upkeep of our naval fleet, working with our Greek partners, and able to project tremendous power, as I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, in all of these troubled areas, whether it's in Libya, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's against the Houthi rebels that tried to shut down global shipping through the Red Sea in solidarity with Hamas for 2 years, and providing the kind of logistical support that Ukraine needs to be able to bring Russia to the table and hopefully bring about an honorable peace so that Ukraine can rebuild its economy, its energy infrastructure, and provide a beautiful future for the Ukrainian people. These are the ways in which the United States and Greece are working as strategic partners to promote our shared values and our shared interests throughout the region. And Suda Bay is the linchpin port for all of this power projection.
John, Greece is modernizing its defense forces, including progress tied to the F-35 program. What message does that bring to the allies and to the competitors?
Well, first, to our allies, it demonstrates that Greece really is one of America's most valued strategic partners. Washington has been very careful as to who has access to the most advanced F-35 technology, and Greece is one of our most trusted partners in Europe and anywhere in the world. And so this demonstrates the value of that partnership for our Greek friends, for Washington, and to other countries that want to be part of that advanced technology circle that is very, very tight, because we don't want to have that technology compromised by untrustworthy allies or by any adversaries. So I think that's one of the problems that we see now in the U.S.-Turkey relationship, where under President Erdogan's policies of the last maybe 9, 10 years, especially after the failed coup attempt in July of 2016, there's been a foreign policy drift in Ankara, moving away from the United States and our NATO partners in so many areas of the world, looking to foment instability in the Middle East, really partnering with many of the countries on the wrong side of the ledger there, expanding its military prowess in many African countries in ways that are contrary to NATO, EU, and American interests there. And also because of the CAATSA sanctions that have been imposed on Turkey for purchasing the Russian S-400 missile system, which would utterly compromise the very sensitive F-35 technology. So Turkey has painted itself into a very bad, dark corner because of Turkish policies, not because of American policies, whereas Greece has shown above so many other European countries. And I would add one more thing, Yanna. Greece has been a reliable partner on the 2% threshold that every NATO country pledged to President Obama in 2014 at the NATO summit in Wales, Scotland, to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense. And Greece has consistently been 2.5%, 3%, along with countries today like Poland and Finland, really the frontier states along this north-south axis up against Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. Unfortunately, Poland and Finland get tremendous credit in the US media for that kind of strong, independent, sovereign defense strategy. Greece does not. And I would like to see Greece be part of that group of countries that are given proper credit by the Trump administration and by American media and leading policy planners and opinion leaders, because Greece has deserved its place at that pantheon of NATO countries that are really addressing their own defense needs, as well as relying on the U.S. nuclear security umbrella that covers the entire continent of Europe.
This is correct, and Greece is being seen a stable Western partner, and it's being perceived that way. What does Athens need to do to sustain this perception?
Well, first of all, it needs to continue what it's doing that's right by Athens, by Greece's own interests. I mean, the number one job of any government is to defend its own national interests. That's why I laugh sometimes when here in Washington we talk about the issue of America first. And I would say, well, of course, that applies to any government in any country. So I presume the agenda of Prime Minister Mitsotakis at this time is Greece first. Whatever is good for Greece is what any responsible government in Greece must carry forward. But I think they've done a tremendous job in Greece through the first Trump administration, then the Biden administration, and now the second Trump administration in securing and upholding the strategic dialogue that binds our two countries even more closely together. And again, has Greece among a small number of countries that enjoy that kind of privileged status as a U.S. ally and partner. Continuing to promote partnership on all the issues that you and I have been covering over the last few minutes on defense cooperation, technology cooperation, intelligence sharing, building out an alternative energy infrastructure so that Europe is no longer reliant on Russia for oil and for natural gas. Being able to provide new transportation corridors, north-south, a vertical corridor that goes all the way up towards Hungary, Poland, and potentially the Baltics. Logistics corridors. Greece is at the center of all of this, and so Greece is making itself one of the most capable partners in all of Europe for the United States to advance our common NATO interests and our bilateral interests between Washington and Athens. And also in a different direction, I think the 3+1, Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, again, on technology cooperation, defense cooperation, energy cooperation, and mutual foreign direct investment, is strengthening the bonds between these three critical democratic allies in the Eastern Mediterranean. And I'll close on this. I'm not sure how many of your viewers are aware, Yanna, of the IMEC corridor that is being put under very serious consideration. It's not being started yet, so I don't want to get ahead of my skis, as they say, but connecting India, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, Cyprus, Greece, Italy, and France. ambitious new transportation, energy, and telecommunications corridors, cables to connect the internet, especially in the age of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, to bind all of these very important countries in ways that no one would have thought possible as recently as 5 years ago. And again, Greece, in the middle of all of these brand new logistics, telecommunications, and transportation and energy corridors. It's an astonishing development. We're very proud of that relationship between the U.S. and Greece, and we encourage everyone here in Washington to advance it, and we would encourage everyone in Athens to advance it to the degree possible.
Well, Greece is definitely taking the spotlight on many of these issues. What do you think, looking ahead, will be Greece's biggest threat?
Well, the region that it is both blessed to be in, because it has one of the most beautiful environments, one of the most beautiful climates anywhere in the world. I mean, the aphorism here is, if one has enough money, there's probably no better place in the world to enjoy a good life and retirement than in Greece. So it's blessed in many ways by its geography, but it's also cursed. There are the ongoing differences with Turkey. Turkey continues to adopt a very aggressive approach regarding this sort of nonsensical blue homeland policy, where it wants to gobble up half of the Aegean Sea and all of the legal and sovereign rights that come with that, including extracting natural resources from half of the Aegean seabed, and extending that all the way east and south of Crete in order to be able to establish exclusive economic zones, say with Libya, at the expense of Greece's legal and sovereign rights. And of course, they've been diminished recently, but the history of very aggressive overflights and incursions and violations of Greek territorial waters, airspace, and a whole host of administrative jurisdictions. And of course, the ongoing occupation of Cyprus, which is a very important issue for Greek foreign policy every day of the week. So Greece is not able to put away this Eastern question. It hasn't been for 100 years. And Turkey, at least under the current leadership, will continue to pose serious security problems and the problems that generate from those security problems in other areas as well. And then, of course, its proximity to the Middle East and Northern Africa and those constant crises of governance, of corruption, of terrorism, and very unfortunately, Yanna, mass migration, which is causing tremendous problems for Greece and especially for many European countries. And Greece, unfortunately, is a frontier country along with Italy, France, and Spain, and maybe Malta, because the European Union is unable to come up with a single serious policy to stem the flow of illegal human trafficking of African migrants. And as technology continues to improve and more African migrants see that there's an opportunity in Europe, they're going to find $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000 and give it to these criminal cartels and try to sail across the Mediterranean. And it's only going to cause more problems for Greece. So again, blessed by geography, cursed by geography, or maybe more accurately, cursed by geopolitics.
I believe that phenomena is worldwide at this moment, but Greece definitely is a hotbed. John, always wonderful to hear your insights, and thank you so much for all this wonderful information. We will be checking back with you again so you can give us a great update on anything that has to do with our geopolitical situations. Thank you so much for everything. And just in closing, what would you like to tell our viewers that are concerned about today's, let's call it an unstable time of this earth?
Well, first of all, thank you again, Yanna, so much for the privilege to be with you and with your audience. I always enjoy our conversations and your probing questions, and always glad to return whenever you have the opportunity to invite me back. Look, in terms of what's happening around the world, I think sometimes our friends, and including my colleagues here in Washington, D.C., tend to take a very ahistorical approach. We tend to be quite narcissistic and think, oh, today is the worst it's ever been in human history. Humanity has been through far, far worse, and I would posit in many ways, there's never actually been a better time to be alive from a material, prosperity, technology, medical advancements, convenience, quality of life series of perspectives than today. We forget how magical our lives are, how convenient our lives are, and how fortunate we are to not only have this world we live in today, but to be able to pass it on so that it becomes even greater and more improved with our children and grandchildren. History has been far, far worse to humanity than anything we're facing today. So if we have that realistic approach, spiritually, we may be a broken people. I don't really have a good answer for you there. But materially, and from everything that's a quantifiable metric of the quality of life, it's absolutely spectacular today. So life and the world goes through cycles. And for people who feel we're in a down cycle, there's always the dawn of tomorrow. So hope, pray, and always be civically engaged. Read, stay on top of the news, participate in voting, be informed, and always engage in civic, respectful, and honorable debate with whoever you disagree with.
Well, words of wisdom from John Sitilides. Thank you so much for being with us, John, and we look forward to having you back again on New Greek Television.
Thanks again.